Did you know cows kill more people every year than terrorists? Or that coconuts kill more people than sharks? It sounds ridiculous, but it's true, and it reveals one of the most dangerous glitches in human psychology. Your brain doesn't judge risk using statistics or math. It judges risk based on how easily you can remember a vivid example. And the easier it is to recall something, the more common it feels. This invisible shortcut shapes your fears, your decisions, your beliefs, and even your political opinions. Once you understand how it works, you'll start noticing exactly how media, marketers, and politicians use it to control millions of people without them even realizing it. Human beings don't measure danger logically. We measure danger emotionally. If something is dramatic, shocking, or unforgettable, it becomes a mental shortcut, a fast way for the brain to say, "This must happen a lot." This is the availability heuristic. In simple terms, if a memory feels vivid, your brain assumes it's frequent, even when it isn't. A shark attack on the news burns itself into your mind. A plane crash is impossible to forget. A viral video of a home invasion gets replayed 1,000 times on your feed. And because those images are so easy to remember, your brain quietly concludes they must be happening everywhere. But the truth is very different. Sharks kill about 5 people per year. Car crashes kill over 40,000. Yet people fear oceans more than highways. One of the most tragic examples happened after 9/11. The images of the attacks were so unforgettable, flames, collapsed towers, desperate crowds, that millions of people became terrified of flying. They felt safer driving. But the statistics were clear. Flying, even then, was dramatically safer than driving. Because so many people shifted from planes to cars, an estimated 1,500 extra deaths occurred in car accidents the following year. Not because the world became more dangerous, but because the most vivid memories felt more convincing than the most accurate data. This is the trap. Vivid memories distort your perception of reality. But once you understand this mechanism, it becomes obvious how some groups use it intentionally as a tool of influence. If you can control which examples people remember, you can control what they fear, what they trust, and what they believe. And the first amplifier of this bias is modern media. News doesn't report what's common. It reports what's attention-grabbing. Fear-driven stories get clicks, keep people watching, and produce revenue. So the news cycle becomes a constant stream of dramatic, emotional, extreme events: school shootings, shark attacks, mysterious diseases, plane crashes, violent assaults, disasters, tragedies, freak accidents. These events are statistically rare, but because they're constantly broadcasted, they feel incredibly common. You're shown a world of danger, even if your actual day-to-day life is incredibly safe. Media knows you're not going to watch a segment titled, "Nothing catastrophic happened today." So they show you the unforgettable, and your brain mistakes it for the typical. Politicians do something similar, but with more intention. If you want power, you don't need an informed population. You need a frightened one. Fear creates urgency. Urgency creates obedience. A politician only needs a single dramatic crime, a single shocking incident, a single vivid example to repeat over and over until it feels like a nationwide crisis. Crime might be decreasing, but if every speech focuses on one horrifying case, the public will believe the world is falling apart. This strategy works because the availability heuristic makes rare events feel universal. People don't vote based on statistics. They vote based on what they remember. This tactic isn't new. Propaganda has used this psychological flaw for nearly a century. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi minister of propaganda, understood the power of repeated dramatic examples long before psychologists gave the bias a name. His strategy was simple. Repeat a vivid message so often that it becomes the mental shortcut people use to interpret everything else. If a lie or a distorted story is repeated enough times, it becomes mentally available. And once it becomes available, it becomes believable. The availability heuristic is the engine that drives propaganda. Marketers use this same mechanism, but in more subtle ways. Scarcity tactics work because they create a vivid example in your mind. Only 3 left in stock. Even if there are 3,000 in a warehouse, the emotional image of missing out becomes easy to imagine, and that mental availability drives urgency. Lottery commercials show the same smiling millionaire holding the giant check. You never see the millions of losers because that image would break the illusion, but the single vivid winner sticks in your mind and makes winning feel more common than it is. Black Friday videos of people racing through stores, grabbing boxes and pushing carts create a vivid emotional impression of scarcity, competition, and urgency, even if the discounts are average and the chaos is staged. When marketers choose the example you remember, they can predict the decision you make. Once you notice how these forces shape your memory, you quickly realize anyone who can control the examples you see can influence the beliefs you form. But you can defend yourself, not by resisting emotion, but by filtering it with logic. And there are 3 simple questions that break the spell every time. The first question is this dramatic or is it common? Just because something is shocking doesn't mean it happens frequently. If it's in the news, it's probably rare. If it's trending, it's probably exceptional. If it's terrifying, it's probably not typical. The brain loves drama, but reality is usually far more boring and much safer. The second question is, what do the actual numbers say? This is where your power returns. Feelings can be loud, but statistics are steady. Data pulls you out of emotion and back into reality. Most fears shrink when you compare them to long-term trends. Most anxieties dissolve when you realize the probability is nowhere near as high as your imagination suggests. Most crises prove to be exaggerations when you look at the full picture instead of the highlight reel. The third question is, who benefits from me believing this? This is the truth detector. If someone profits from your fear, a politician, a marketer, a media company, you should slow down and double-check the facts. If someone gains power, attention, money, or influence by keeping you afraid, that alone should trigger skepticism. This question exposes the incentives behind the message and helps you see whether you're being informed or manipulated. To make this practical, think of someone who's afraid of flying. Logically, air travel is the safest form of transportation in the world. Statistically, you are far more likely to be harmed driving to the airport than sitting in a plane at 35,000 feet. But when someone afraid of flying imagines an airplane, they don't picture safety. They remember fiery wreckage from movies, dramatic news clips, turbulent stories, headlines about mechanical failures, or interviews with shaken survivors. Those vivid examples overshadow the calm, boring, consistent reality. The memory feels more powerful than the math, and the fear feels real. This is the availability heuristic in its purest form. Memories are not reality. Memories are not statistics. Memories are not truth. When you finally separate your emotional memories from the actual evidence, your decisions become calmer. Your worldview becomes clearer. Your fears become proportionate. You begin to see the world as it is, not as it feels in the moment. The availability heuristic is just one of many invisible mental shortcuts that steer your behavior every day. It shapes what you fear, who you trust, what you believe, and how you respond to the world around you. But the moment you understand it, the manipulation loses its power. You begin questioning what's dramatic versus what's real. You start looking for data instead of headlines. You stop letting vivid memories dictate your truth. And that shift alone can elevate your decision-making more than most people will ever realize. If you want to keep upgrading your mind and learning how these psychological biases shape your perceptions and decisions, make sure you subscribe. This is only one cognitive bias among dozens that influence you every single day, and once you learn how they work, you'll start thinking on a completely different level.